So, hi everyone. Super excited to host Jenny Nishimura. Hopefully, I didn't butcher your name, Jenny, from Circle CI on this webinar. Uh, Overall, in this webinar, we'll have a casual conversation with Jenny about Circle CI's workplace strategy. We'll get some tips and tricks about how she manages the workplace at Circle CI. And we'll also see how Gable helps in implementing some of these strategies. Specifically, we'll focus on dedicated offices and access control, which is a part of the workplace strategy, of course, and part of the Gable platform as well. We'll talk about data, about insights, both broadly, but also specifically in terms of how Gable helps make some of these data-driven decisions. So before we jump into the discussion, just a little bit about Jenny. She'll introduce herself in more depth, but Jenny is a senior workplace manager and the main driver for implementing Gable at Circle CI. On a personal note, Jenny is just like a wonderful person and partner to work with. I can definitely tell you all that for me personally and for the team at Gable, we've learned a bunch about the industry's needs through the feedback and conversation with Jenny. A little bit about Gable. For those of you that are not familiar, I'm not gonna walk you through slides, but at a very high level, Gable is a platform that helps you manage all your hybrid and remote workplace needs. Four main pillars underneath. One is on-demand spaces, essentially the ability to book any space, anywhere you want on the planet, from a global network of hosts. And we really take quality very seriously. So it's not just the quantity of these spaces, but also the high quality of them. The second piece, which is going to be the main topic we'll dive deep into today, is going to be HQ, which is really a name for dedicated offices and the ability to empower your employees to book desks, to book rooms at your dedicated offices. Another upcoming pillar for us is visitor management. Which is essentially the experience that companies use to welcome guests and make that experience delightful and simple and also secure for them. And last but not least is event orchestration, which has two underneath components. One of them is the marketplace and the liquidity of event-specific spaces. The other one is the workflow that are required to orchestrate an event, not just the venue selection, but the RSVP, the reporting, the follow-up surveys, etc. So with that, let's transition to the main thing, which is having the conversation with Jenny. And Jenny, maybe we'll just start with you introducing Circle CI and your role there, and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny. My pronouns are she, her. I am here on the workplace team at Circle CI. So what does Circle CI do? We are a continuous integration and deployment platform that allows engineers to build, test, and deploy software. So we have a little over 300 employees, and our population is spread throughout 8 countries. We do have office presence. So we have 5 offices, one here in San Francisco, Denver, Amsterdam, Paris, and Tokyo. However, most of our employees do remain distributed. I'm based here in San Francisco. I oversee the operations and programs of our global offices. I work alongside our ERGs to our employee resource groups to host hybrid events. I spend a lot of time focusing on how to get people excited to come into the office and collaborate in person, whether it's through team on-sites or social events.
Wonderful. So maybe just to kick us off, I guess, in terms of the first question, what would you say are the biggest challenges that workplace leaders face today? And specifically, obviously working with distributed team as Circle CI definitely does. And also how you at Circle CI, system aside, just thinking about this from a strategic standpoint, how are you tackling these challenges?
Yeah, I think, with COVID, it brought so much isolation to folks and forced a lot of people to have to work remotely that never really had that experience as a company. So with that, I think isolation is that feeling of being disconnected, and isolation is still an ongoing issue, not just within the workplace, but I think in general, like folks are still kind of getting used to being back into the office. So I think the biggest issue right now with most companies is culture and community. It's a huge challenge for folks that are new to the remote and hybrid world. Um, there needs to be a lot of intention behind building personal connections and trust with people when it's through a computer. I think luckily Circle CI has always been a remote first company. So pre-pandemic, because we have a global presence and we don't have that many offices, a lot of our employees have only known this remote world. I remember during my interview process, going onto Circle CI and kind of scouring the website. I wanted to get an idea of what it was like to be an employee at Circle CI. We have a blog, and I remember finding a blog post. I think it was called "What It Means to Be Remote First versus Remote Friendly." And in that blog post, one of our product managers discusses how Circle CI has tackled that challenge of of remote workers feeling disconnected from their team. So Circle CI has adopted this remote first approach, which, like, what does that really mean? It means that we prioritize remote work, and then we build our workflows
Mm-hmm.
and processes to kind of accommodate those employees. So a couple
Mm-hmm.
examples of how we do that is we know that if we're hosting a call hands, we first we try to do one at 9 a.m. for our employees here in the US. And then every now and then we'll host one that's at 5 p.m. So our EMEA and Japan team can join those ones. We always recorded our
Mm-hmm.
meetings, whether it's an all hands, we have smaller team all hands, we call them small hands. So we record all of those meetings and we share it. So our teammates
Mm-hmm.
that are located in other parts of the world can always review them. So
Mm-hmm.
terms of like workflows and processes, communication is really central. So how do we structure
Mm-hmm.
and make them, accessible to all of our employees? So that's one way
Yeah.
to do that. And then also just bringing like intentionality behind making folks feel like they can have like these social networks. Silly
Mm-hmm.
things, having like a dogs Slack channel that we only post about our dogs,
Mm-hmm.
memes about dogs, or those types of social events that we do.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a really great employee resource program. So we try to bring people together that are outside of work, really. So again, like building that
Mm-hmm.
communication and interpersonal relationship, we try to do that through um, Slack and through meetings and those types of resources.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wonderful. So it sounds like obviously like Circle CI definitely has like a strong like remote DNA to begin with, and maybe that uh, transition wasn't that difficult because you didn't necessarily need to make it because a lot of the I guess the DNA and the processes were already in place. But also curious about, I guess, how you think about balancing, the ability to work effectively and collaboratively when you're remote, uh, coupled with the need, like, for, teams to get together. And how do you balance and how do you think about like both the frequency of like, when and how much you think it actually matters, but then also, what are some of the tactics that you've seen as useful to bring in and motivate, teams to get together and meet in the physical world as well?
Yeah, that's a super great question, Tamar. So since I've been with Circle CI, think since March, so a little under a year. And in my time here, I as a workplace partner, like we've really been focusing on in-person collaboration, right? Like we've kind of mastered that remote setting through the 12 years
Mm-hmm.
that has been in business. But now, like post-pandemic, everyone's starting to think about like what does this return to office look like? We didn't want to force that for our employees, really. We wanted it to try to be a little bit more of a natural, how do we bring people together and how do we promote it, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
don't want to force people and return to work. We don't like that word. We want people to come in and we want them to collaborate in person. Um, so what we've done is, I think one of my first projects here at Circle CI was onboarding, it was assessing different co-working partners. And I think this is the main reason of this webinar is we chose Gable because we wanted our employees to be able to meet wherever they were, despite there being an office presence. So like I said, we had, we're spread out throughout 8 different countries. We have 5 offices. So there are so many points where people are highly populated. So Portland is a great example. Vancouver is a great example. London is
Mm-hmm.
have offices in these locations, but we want the incentive for folks to get together. So we partnered with you to give our employees day passes so they can have that on-demand co-working pass and come in and meet whenever they wanted to. So outside of that, what else are we doing to kind of drive people together?
Mm-hmm.
Started onboarding folks all in the San Francisco office. So I think it's every 2 months we'll fly in new hires and their managers and bring them to the San Francisco office. It's a 3-day packed event where they have all their onboarding classes are here. We plan social.
Mm-hmm.
We do icebreakers. We really try to give them the opportunity to not only learn what Circle CI is, what our product is, explore all the different departments,
Mm-hmm.
and have these sessions live, right? So, like, our CTO is sitting down with our new hires and he's having a conversation about the product. But we're also hosting
Mm-hmm.
fun events. So we'll take them to the Exploratorium. I think whenever this upcoming onboarding session, we're going to take them to a Giants game. So just building those, fostering those connections is really what we're hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So obviously it sounds like, you have like, the full spectrum of like, the fully remote experience, the on-demand experience for, for some teams. And I think you've also touched on, the dedicated office, experience. And maybe I do know that we wanted to focus a little bit more about the latter. So maybe you can speak a little bit more about what's important for you when you think about specifically, I guess, like, implementing a system when it comes to managing the employee experience at the HQ?
Mm-hmm. Um, I think so. With our HQ feature, I think we use your product not only for our global date, like our global co-working passes, but for this HQ feature. So what is that? Um, it is a way for our employees to be able to book seats at our offices. Why do we? There's a couple of reasons why we ask our employees to do that. In San Francisco specifically, we ask employees to reserve seats because it does integrate with Brivo, which we'll get to that part of the webinar. But
Mm-hmm.
security purposes, we want our employees to be able to reserve a desk for the day, and for them to be able to tap their badge and activate their badge. We don't want we've had some incidences in the past where we're just a little bit we need that tighter security.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the most exciting part about Gable's feature is not there's the integration between our day passes and H
Mm-hmm.
where it's called Team View. And the idea
Mm-hmm.
folks can see where anyone in Circle CI is working for the day. So if there is someone that works remotely in Vancouver, and they're meeting with another colleague, well, another person in Vancouver can go onto the team view and see, hey, look, my 2 coworkers are working in a Gable spot. Tomorrow I'm going to join them. Or I'm visiting San Francisco for the week for personal reasons, maybe. I know who's going into the office that day. My CEO is going to be in. I can go and work alongside him. So those opportunities, Gable really helps highlight like where are our employees working for the day. And I think that was one of the things that we were really excited about when we onboarded Gable.
Wonderful. And by the way, for the audience, I promise that I'll do a very quick demo of some of the experiences that Jenny mentioned, just to bring, some of these to life. But maybe I do think that you touched upon, of course, like, the Brivo integration, and for you in the audience, like, Brivo is really an access control system. We are planning, of course, to integrate multiple underlying systems. We started with Brivo, but really that originated, I guess, Jenny, from from your feedback, and I think you spoke a little bit about the motivation, but maybe through the lens primarily of data. Can you maybe speak a little bit more about why it is important to have the different systems really integrated in your for your specific case?
Yeah. So I wanted all of my data to be on one platform. We have with those 5 offices, there, San Francisco is a dedicated suite. Denver and Japan are WeWorks. Paris is a Spaces. So I'm having to pull all these different reports, upload them to a spreadsheet in order to see the utilization. That is the data point that as a workplace leader, I'm looking at is
Mm-hmm.
how often are folks going in? We want to know
Mm-hmm.
how often, what is that overall utilization month over month? Um,
Mm-hmm.
not only that for our offices, but where are folks meeting with our global co-working passes? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's also really important for us because we need to understand if we're thinking about growing, what are our real estate
Mm-hmm.
based on? They're based on those data points. We
Mm-hmm.
are meeting multiple times a week in London. So that could be a potential hub for us. We see the folks
Mm-hmm.
in Portland. And then in addition to our in-office usage, are people meeting in our offices? Do we need to downsize our office? Are people meeting is there a overflow of capacity in one of our offices? Do we need to upgrade our office? So all of those data points we can get now through Gable, which
Mm-hmm.
is a huge pain point for me is having to assess all these different reports. And then I reach out to one of my colleagues
Mm-hmm.
runs a visual report for me so we can show our leadership team.
Yeah.
So the thought now is that we can use Gable for all of this.
This is great. By the way, this is, very consistent with what we hear from, many of our customers. When I think about the data is obviously just a mean, and the real insight that they're trying to drive typically falls in one of two buckets. One of them is around employee engagement and really thinking about how they can get the right data and insights to understand what actually brings their employees together. And it could be that you'd be able to spot different trends, like, oh, there are specific days that are better for collaboration, or maybe specific departments that do it more than others. And that is just a trigger for you to drill in deeper to understand what's driving engagement, and then hopefully to come up with the right tactic and strategies to apply it across the board. And the other one that you've mentioned, which is, again is very consistent with what we hear, is coming more from the real estate side of the building or the finance side of the building, which is, okay, we want to understand utilization so we can make smarter, return on investment decision. And that could mean either expanding footprint of dedicated office or vice versa, actually decreasing it. And I think one of the nice things with a company like Circle CI that really has the portfolio of remote, of on demand, and also on premises and on HQ is that you have the flexibility to to swap them around. And we're hoping, obviously, at Gable that we're helping to empower some of that, I guess, with the product. Uh, so maybe on the theme of, I guess, metrics, maybe when you think about your specific role, if there's one or two KPIs, the most salient KPIs that you're thinking about uh, really optimizing, I guess, for in the context, of course, of workplace engagement, what or workplace, not necessarily just engagement, but also on the I guess on the cost saving side, what would be the most important, say, 1 to 2 metrics that you really care about and think about day in day out?
hmm Um, right now, I'm really focused on those 2 metrics that I mentioned before. So it's really office utilization, and you tied it really well with when our look, it's engagement. Like how are we drawing people back into the office? Kind of goes back to our first point about culture and community. Like what I'm focusing on as a workplace leader is building that culture back up and for our employees, specifically in the office. Like I said, I think we've done a really good job of being able to handle that remotely. So looking at where are my like highs of when folks are coming into the office. So by using that data, that office utilization on a daily basis, where do I see my peaks?
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the past 6 months, I've noticed that those peaks come when we have on-sites. So departments will
Mm-hmm.
office. The product team just came last week. And that draws in a lot of folks that don't typically come to the office. We have folks that are really remote, but they live in the Bay. They're within a commutable distance, but
Mm-hmm.
is remote. Um, so they choose to come in. And so I'm trying to figure out like when are those events highlighted? Like who's coming in and why are they coming in? So
Mm-hmm.
our data, I'm finding that it's through these on-sites or it's when we have in-person onboarding where teammates are choosing to come into the office to make those personal connections, to meet their colleague that just joined, to meet their colleague that they've known for 5 years that they've never met, who's traveling to San Francisco. So your reporting feature is really helpful in that way where I can pull that data and I could see where those peaks are. I can identify what happened on February 14th. I knew that we had this one event. Maybe it was an employee resource hybrid event that we threw that drew in 20 extra people. Maybe it was just a Wednesday that we offer lunch that people wanted to come in. So that's where I'm trying to figure out is how can I get more folks excited to come back into the office? And looking at those metrics really does help.
Wonderful. So maybe if you had a magic wand, like, to implement, like, anything else, whether it's through Gable or any other, like, either process or system, to really help you with that goal that you've just, like, so clearly articulated, what maybe comes in mind? Like, again, if you could do really anything through a process, through a system, what would that be?
Yeah, you're picking my brain here for a new product feature. I love it. I'll be honest. I think the ability for me to upload. Okay, so when we think about desk reservation systems, unless employees have to use it, they typically won't. And this is just a consistent issue, I think, for all workplace leaders is it's hard to get that data from a reservation system that's not connected to a badge system. So the badge system has the accurate data. Someone's coming in, they're tapping their badge. That's easy to monitor when you have a dedicated suite. When you have a WeWork suite or when you have a Spaces suite, something that you're subletting, you don't have that data. And you might have it to a really small degree. With WeWork, you could see, I know 5 people came in on this day. If you want a more in-depth report, you have to either pay for it or whatever. So my point here is that it is really difficult to get data in those other my office reporting in those other locations. I usually have to reach out to the property manager. They'll give me a long list. And that's kind of where I add all of those different data points to a Google Sheet. So I think it would be great if in Gable we were able to upload other reportings for our HQs. That way we can really all live in one sheet. Because even though we use it for San Francisco now, I'm still going to have to pull the WeWork ones because people, you want them and I encourage them to use it just for team visibility. Like I want to know when my Denver employees are going to the office. It's hard to get folks really to get on board with that unless it's kind of like a forced integration. So as much as I love it and as much as I want my employees to use it, um, there's maybe a 50% chance that they will actually use it. So being able to upload that raw data of occupancy, my occupancy data from those other suites into Gable, just so I can get a holistic view of my employee usage. I think that would be my dream.
Wonderful. This is like obviously like great feedback. One thing I would say that we're already trying to do along these lines would be to properly capture check-in data. So even if it's outside of the building, which clearly is much easier through the likes of integrations to access control systems. When you think about on demand, it is quite a challenging task to technically integrate to every access control system out there, like WeWork space. But we already try to collect the check-in data both from the employee as soon as they come in. We prompt them, through notification, whether it's email or the Gable app or Slack, to let us know that they're actually checking in. And we do the same thing with the host. So almost like a double trigger type of experience to ensure that we can capture the checking data more accurately. But I really love the idea of either integrating to some of the common system or having the ability for the customer to really upload that data into Gable, because at the end of the day, there's so much value, obviously, in consolidating all the data under one platform, just to generate really the insights and to understand what's happening across the board. So maybe this is actually a nice segue for me to just show a couple of the experiences at Gable that we actually covered, like whether it's TeamView or HQ, and also explain how the badging integration actually works. And as I do that, obviously, Jenny, feel free to jump in and maybe add some tips and tricks and how you use different experiences on Gable. So let me share my screen. And just give me thumbs up if you can see it. Awesome. So I know I promised no slides, but I lied. I'm actually going to go just through two. I think the main purpose, by the way, for those of you that are not familiar with Gable, just to give you a bird's eye view of our products and platform. I think it's just helpful to understand what's under the hood. And then we'll jump into a couple of things that I wanna show in context and connection to this discussion that we had with Jenny. So at the top level, the Gable product portfolio really is combined of these four key pillar experiences. The on-demand experience, which is really the ability for you to book any space on the planet through the network of many thousands of co-working spaces, both large and small, again, globally. And we take not just quantity, but also quality assurance very seriously as part of that aspect. The second one, which we've obviously spent the bulk of the time talking about, is what we call HQ, which is really your ability to manage your dedicated offices and give your employees the ability to book desks and rooms at these offices. And obviously, there's more under the hood, like access control integration. The third pillar is actually something that we were hard at work. We're planning to launch it early in Q2, is our visitor management experience. So really coupled with the HQ, and hopefully Circle CI is going to be one of the customers that's also going to take advantage of this experience, is not only to welcome employees into the HQ, but also guests. And we want to do it with a very clean, simple, and beautiful experience that would both help you represent your brand in a very good way, but also keep your HQ secure. And last but not least is events, which again, we touched upon. And events has two components. One of them is the marketplace, to the extent that you actually want to source a venue that is outside of the building. And typically these are spaces that are different than the regular meeting rooms or private offices or obviously desks that you can find at the WeWork. This is like a different grade in terms of configuration, capacity. We've just recently partnered with Convene, so a lot of great venue options. And the other piece to it is the actual workflow, because again, orchestrating an event is very different than booking a desk. There's more prep, there's more back and forth with the venue around configuration and pricing, and there's a lot of more follow-ups in regards to the RSVP, making sure that people are actually coming, running the right reports, serving your attendees after the event is done. So all of that is basically being captured in the Gable platform. And therefore, you can pick and choose, of course, to use one or more of these key product experiences. Underneath each of these, we have our platform. And our platform is combined of these 6 main models. The data and insights, which again, we've spent a lot of time talking about, but this sits underlying and underlies everything that we do. And our goal is really to empower you to make the right employee engagement decisions, as well as the right real estate decisions. Network we talked about, but that really powers both the on-demand and the event models, and a growing high quality list of hosts there. Permissions, and again, we actually didn't spend much time to talk about, but that's where each company can set their own configuration around, things like booking and budgets and approval process. It's really where you take your policy and strategy and put it to life in the system, and every company can have its own set of workflows and permissions. Integrations, there's 2 kinds. One is really about making your employees' life easier and making sure that we work where they work. No pun intended with we work. So this is examples would be integrating to Slack. So we have the ability, and maybe I'll show it in a second, to actually book a space at the HQ or flexible space through Slack without even leaving that experience. If that's your preferred method, you don't have to go to Gable. This is not our mission. Our mission is really to help you do what you want to do as quickly as possible with the tools that you're already using. The other examples of integration would be things like what we discussed in the context of access control or integrations to the HR system, SSO, really things that gives the company the ability to plug into the system that they already use and make sure that they are more productive and secure in doing that. Collaboration, we'll get a glimpse of that, but the social experience, which Jenny actually talked about in terms of being so critical to the output of the company, we want to make sure that we actually manifest and bring it to life in the core product experiences. And last but not least, security obviously goes without saying. We want to make sure that privacy is protected and that your data is protected. And that's something that we take very, very seriously. So no more slides. Let me actually jump into a couple of quick maybe visual demos that would touch upon a couple of the things that we talked about. So again, just very quick orientation on the nav, the explore spaces, which is really that on-demand experience. You can both search for any space on the planet, you can scroll down and see different recommendations, and to have a quick jump point. So things like spaces that were recently booked by your team, by the way, either at a co-working space or at your HQ. So talking about that social experience, for example, here I can see that on Feb 15, Matthew and Kevin and Andrew booked a space, and I can be a click away from joining them. A quick way to book it again, these are spaces that I've previously booked, spaces that I've recently viewed. You get the gist, almost like think about this like the Netflix of booking spaces. Then the next up here is the HQ experience. So this is our demo environment. You can see that we've uploaded different HQs, like the one in SF or the one in New York. Let's jump and just see a quick example. I'm going to this HQ at San Francisco. I can immediately see teammates that have actually booked at the same day. So I can click, I can see exactly who they are, where they're sitting. I can also see desks that are assigned to me, because under the hood, there's obviously a floor plan that was annotated. It was tagged with spaces that can either be open seating or assigned to specific departments or assigned to specific individuals. So that's exactly what I see here. And there's also other type of spaces like private offices. For example, here's the CEO private office, or meeting rooms. And let's just quickly go through how to book it. It's really as simple as find a space that you're interested. Let's say that I want to book this seat that is assigned to me. You can see the amenities, the floor that it's located, any photo that was added, click book, and you're done. From here, you can obviously add it to any of the calendar that you're using. as well as inviting others. We typically recommend people that you book with, but you can also pick really anyone from your directory. It could be users, could be entire teams. Talking about, by the way, the access control and the Brivo integration, the way this works under the hood, imagine that now somebody swiped their badge. If they've pre-booked, that really is going to be represented as the check-in indication. And if they haven't, we're going to automatically create a booking for them. Now, the beautiful thing with this is that that's going to be automatically reflected in the reporting. So great segue to the reporting. We have a lot of it, but let's just go maybe to a few. I'll start with the booking report. You can see that we can break it down for the old, the flex, and the HQ at the top level. A lot of slice and dices you can do, like the type of metric that you're interested in, whether it's budget or booking. You can break it down by department, by location, or by users. You can filter down to the departments, filter down on space types, but you start to get the sense of, okay, what is actually happening? So I can see that there's 414 bookings, that there's a growth month of a month. I can see the busiest day, and I can see the percent of users that checked in. I can see the breakdown of space types that were booked, and this is here just from a single report. I think the other one that Jenny briefly talked about is utilization. If I go back to this main dashboard report, you can see that we also show you the desk utilization. So outside of all the desks that you have, multiplied by the days in the month, we can say what is the utilization. In this demo environment, for example, that 8%, you can choose if it's low or high, but that could be a great signal for you to say, oh, there's something that may trigger me to make a decision around expanding or contracting. But couple that, of course, with the other behavioral data around, like, is there a specific day? Is there a specific department that may be behaving differently? Maybe the last thing I would show you in the context of reports, we also talked about that piece as well, is our spaces report. So again, a different cut of the data to show you the top location. So again, for a company like Circle CI, which is really distributed, and also using both dedicated offices as well as flexible spaces, this could be a great indication of, okay, what's going on across the board? What are the top used location? And with each of these locations, what are the most booked spaces? So for example, if I filter here just on SF, this now turns into a heat map of the top booked spaces within SF. So you can see it here, and you can see that it's a combination of both HQ as well as dedicated spaces. You can obviously drill down to the specific bookings by day, by users, by bookings. So again, a lot of data, but at the end of the day, the idea would be empower you to make one of these two decisions: better employee engagement and better return on investment on your HQ. Maybe the last thing I would show before we'll open it up for Q&A is Team View, because I think Jenny touched upon that as well. So again, a wonderful ability both for admin and managers just to see where the global team is distributed to date, but also a great and powerful way for employees to see who from their teammates is booking and where, and to use that as a jump point. So again, what we're looking at here as an example is February 12 to February 18, and my global team. So this company works globally across 5 different continents. In each, you can actually see who's booking and where. So both as an insight, but also as a mean to join them. So let's say that I'm going to be in New York next week, and I can see that Andrew, is actually going to be at this co-working space. I'm a click away from simply joining Andrew. In this case, it's the HQ. In other cases, it could be the on-demand space. Let me stop sharing. And yeah, would love to see if there's any questions from the audience. Not seeing anything in the chat, but obviously feel free to share and send any question to me, to Jenny, about anything that we've discussed. Jenny, maybe in the meantime, like, anything you would like to add, to the audience.
Yeah, I think something that we didn't talk about yet really was the collaborative effort that we both put in to create this Brivo integration. Some of my pain points really as an admin for an access control system and like a desk reservation system is user experience. I'm huge on user experience. I want to make sure things are easy for my employees, that there are no barriers to get into the office. It's already hard enough to get folks into the office, so we don't want to create those unnecessary barriers. In our previous desk tool, there was kind of that two-part process that we need for our security purposes, right? So you have to reserve a desk and then you have to check in. I came to you all with that issue, like, hey, we're having this issue where folks who are coming to the office for the first time for an on-site, I give them the instructions in an email, they overlook it, they're stuck now at the front desk. They can't get in through the door because they don't know what to do next. I let them in and then the data's off right there, right? Like I'm letting them in, now they don't have that data point. So I expressed that to you all, and you came up with these great notifications. You could get them in 3 different ways. If the employee doesn't check in as required by Circle CI, they'll get a notification Gable app. It'll be a push notification, or they'll get a Slack notification, or they'll get an email saying, hey, you need to activate your badge. So that right there hits those 2 points that we were looking for. We were looking for a really clean, easy user flow and user experience. And we are also looking to hit that security requirement that we have. I really that was huge for me. And I really nerded out that first day that I did it. And I was like, hey, look, it was automatic, super easy. Anyone can do it. So I'm really excited to really launch that product for the rest of our employees. It looks like we have a question from Kristen. Do you provide badges for those that are remote and visit the office? Yes, Kristen, I do. So for anyone that's coming into the office for an on-site or that just happens to be here for a personal visit maybe, we have Jira ticketing system, so I ask folks just to request a badge. I give them the badge for the time that they're in the office, and then once they leave, I'll ask them to return it, or if I know that they're going to come back in another month or 2 months or whatever it may be, they're welcome to keep the badge, because we have that check-in system. That's kind of where that security layer lies, where if they leave and then they lose their badge somewhere, it's there. Yeah.
Great. One thing I would add, I've heard it from other companies, is that with remote employees that are maybe less frequently visiting specific HQs, if they wouldn't give them a badge, they would still ask them to check in. So a part of that visitor experience, you can also select that the visit type is actually a remote employee, and you're still capturing that data in that way. But either way, whether you're doing it through badge or through some other form of checking in, obviously that's critical to really understand utilization, especially with obviously global distributed teams like yourselves. Awesome. So unless any additional questions, I want to thank everybody obviously for coming. We'll share the recording with all of you. If you'd like to learn more about Gable, obviously we would love to for you to reach out. You can visit the website. You can obviously just get started, give it a spin to yourself, and we would love to talk with you and show you more in case you're interested. So thank you very much. Thank you again, Jenny. And that's it for today. Thank you all
For having me.